punk rock came. And even though it's hard for a lot of people to believe that people who were transported in a Mirabelle Lemon spaceship on their last tour came out of punk rock in our heads, that was a punk rock thing to do. And everything that we do comes from this notion of not forgetting where we came from, who we are, and that we have to prove ourselves every record. That's a punk rock notion. You know what I mean?
I guess they do agree. Now, to do something like that, to come into a Lemon, and then to strip it down the way you did this time, within the 4 of the band and the 5 in the corporation, I guess that would be Paul, do you guys, are the disagreements within the band different than they would have been, say, before you played the Elma combo just after Lennon had died? Were the disagreements different at this point?
Still over the deli tray, mostly.
You just keep folding and folding?
Really rough. We fight all the time. It's like, you know, making a record with you two is a really messy, messy situation. Because you got 4 people who, you know, just feel very strongly about what they do. But I think the thing that separates, perhaps, you two from other groups that I've met is that we have a giant ego, but it's one that we share rather than 4 individual egos. Do you know what I mean?
Is that harder sometimes to do? Because the band gets so much press, and at certain stages of your career, the press is so harsh on the band to the point where personal attacks go at everybody at the expense of the music. So the giant lemon, the mirror lemon, completely washes away the fact that you're playing a show.
What we were trying to do was right in the middle of that movement. When the grunge thing was happening, we were sailing our ship the wrong way, up tide, you know, in plastic pants. And, you know, a video, Zoo TV thing was just, that was the punk rock thing to do at the time.
Calling the White
Not
House.
to, you know, put on a pair of dungarees. And so right when, you know, rock and roll was getting really brown and dull and it was getting all progressive rock and boring and long again, we went day-glow on pop. And we started working with DJs and we started putting on a show that was more like black music, more like George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic, you know, the mothership. You know what I'm saying?
Tear the roof off, to go to tear the roof off.
And none of the brothers had any problem with it. But, you know, white middle-class kids from Daddy had bought them a Les Paul were going, that's not rock and roll. No, you know,
and then like, as that intelligent music kept going, got so deep, you had another wave with Britpop in England. You had bands like Oasis who just went right after what their perception of the element of rock and roll. And we had Noel Gallagher in here on Monday coming in town on the Brotherly Love Tour. And Noel Gallagher spent a good portion of the interview just taking apart band after band after band. Everybody who's popular right now, but when it came to you guys, he had a different tune to sing, and actually we've got a little message from Noel Gallagher, so when we take a look at Noel to you two right there. All right.
Everybody wants to be as big as you two. Everybody wants to have that catalogue of, you know, great albums behind them. Now, whether you like them or not is you know, whether you like the music or not, that's by the by. It doesn't really matter. If you're a fan, great. But you have to respect them for what they've done for music. You have to. They're the biggest. It's the biggest rock and roll show in the world, and they pull it off. You know, and they mean it. I know them. They mean it. You take it from me, they mean it.
Similar words. Oh, by the way, Noel did say give him a call on the road. He's on his mobile. He does want to hear from you. You reach a point where you touch an audience, and there's a loyalty factor. Within your own crew, there are people who have been there from, you know, way back when. Loyalty is, I imagine, what's keeping you together, because people can't even stay together with someone they apparently love for longer than 4 years.
It's nothing to do with loyalty. We've got nowhere else to go.
I just couldn't say that. It was you.
Unemployable.
Is there something between the 4 of you that people are missing? Because it is an unbelievable surprise.
We're all gay.
I've been reporting that for 3 months, man.
You have a problem with that?
I think it's awesome and good for you. What do you think we call it? You two does much. So, we mentioned your baby earlier, and we should give you this. This is just some gear for the kid, and anybody who start having new kids will start giving you gear as well. Which kind of goes with the logo, I guess. You know, so we've got a whole bag of Much Music stuff for you here.
Sponsor a child.
That's right. It's going to happen. We will talk about other
Thank you.
issues
It's very
as
kind.
well. No problem. We have lots to go. There is four. I mean, family is such a big part of what you do, and you can tell that on stage.
Family,
The family.
if you know what I'm saying.
Could that be Sly's
It
family?
is. No, being in a band is a bit like being in the mob, you know, or the priesthood. It's you won't get out of it while you're alive.
You did sing with Frank,
Yes, I did sing with Frank.
so it would make some sense.
Frank is the man.
It's funny how we idolize certain people. The Joey Ramone is one that I'd like to talk about in just a bit. But one of the songs that got such a monstrous ovation was Beautiful Day. And I mean, you know, it was a return, it seemed. A lot of people love to say, hey, U2's got to come back. You know, U2 is coming back. Did you go somewhere that we didn't hear about?
We got all arty on people, I think. Wasn't that it, Larry?
I think, you know, we have to make it interesting for ourselves, and, you know, we challenged our audience, and we definitely took them up mountains and down ravines and stuff like that, and, you know, that's what you got to do, and you got to do those things to get to make the record that we've just made. And we're not embarrassed about that, and we've got a license with our audience, and that's why our audience is so important. We've got a license to do those things, and we've never repeated ourselves, and people think that that's some sort of technique. The reality is that we wouldn't know how to. You know, we're actually not qualified to do that. But I think that, you know, we want to do other things, and you know, talking to Age earlier on about, you know, is this the pinnacle? Is this where it's at? And it's like there's unfinished business for you two. There are still things left for us to do, and who knows when we'll do that, and making great records and having great songs out there and getting on the radio and challenging all the other stuff that's out there. That's our job.
It appeared to be. U2 here in the Much Music environment in downtown Toronto. Stick around. More of our conversation with U2 after this.
Better ask around. D12 throws the ball.
We've got them all in here. A lot of artists, when we spoke to Badly Drawn Boy, he said when he met his idol Bruce Springsteen, he apologized for buying the bootlegs. Because he said, you know, he felt like he let him down. And I don't know how you guys, if you're totally forgiving, but, well, I had a friend steal a towel from your hotel a long time ago. I'm not offering to return it, by the way. That is the hotel from the Clarence. So,
Edge does housekeeping.
he does housekeeping. A little more bleach next time.
I remember that towel.
This is yours. And it's now gone. I want to bring it down to a different level. You mentioned Joey Ramone on stage, and when Joey Ramone passed away, there was so much. He made the covers of the papers, and the stories were delivered about the life, and people started to eulogize with him. And by the way, I really wished that the person who delivered the eulogy started it with 1, 2, 3, 4, but they didn't. So it was a little sad. But you know that he was listening to your album, and you know that the song has been reported that he passed away to, and it made me think of heroes and how you don't have that many really anymore. And when you hear something like Joey Ramone in that context, how do you feel?
Well, actually, I do have a lot of heroes, and with Joey Ramone, what was extraordinary about him is he's more of an anti, really, you know. And the thing that I was telling you earlier about punk rock, and that it's a spirit more than it is anything else. Once it becomes a uniform or, you know, a set of records, it's not as interesting. But what Joey Ramone did for us was, he told us when we were 15 and 16 that you know you could be in a rock and roll band and take it all the way, because that's what the Ramones meant to us. And in fact, I don't know if you know this, but you know, you showed some clippings of us early on when we were kids, but way before that, when we were still at school, we were trying to get on a local TV show. And a big shot producer was coming down to see us in our rehearsal room, and we were fighting and kicking the shit out of each other, trying to end songs, trying to start songs, what was in the middle. We couldn't agree on anything. So when he came through the door, we couldn't agree on playing 2 of our own songs. So we played him 2 Ramones songs back to back, and he said, did you really write those yourself? And we said, yeah. And he put us on the TV show. And we played our own songs on the TV show. But I got to say thank you to Joey Ramone for, for getting us started. That was cool.
Their entire career based on a scam. This interview's over. It is so done. Heroes, Edge, people who have got to you in a way that you wouldn't normally get. Not the heroes on television. Somebody who's touched you and will still touch you today.
John Hume, who's a politician in Northern Ireland, who's spent his entire career fighting for a peaceful solution in the North. He represents the nationalist community, but as opposed to violence his whole career, has been the victim of many attempts to assassinate him, and he's just one of those people who you just can't imagine, the amount of determination that it must have taken to go through all those years and still hold to that principle. So he's a hero of mine.
Reading the book Before the Dawn, the Jerry Adams story, a while back, you talked about shaking his hand, trying to get a sense of the story outside of what I get on television. The impact of shaking his hand after drawing that line in the sand. You've got the Republican, the different kind. You've got the Unionist. What does that mean to you at this point? Because you almost get the sense that it's sort of lost. The real story is sort of lost on all that.
Well, in Ireland, they said the solution to the troubles in Ireland was, 100,000 rock bands. Because, up in the north, it was the music that brought everyone together. And it was the music that kind of showed people a different way. But with regards letting go of old, old kind of convictions, and I thought I had the most open mind. I thought but I was always really angry when a bomb would go off in Liverpool, or a bomb would go off somewhere, and I just can't really cope with the idea that an idea can be worth more than a human life. And so for me to meet people who are responsible for those kind of atrocities is very difficult for me. But I have to understand that this is the time in Ireland to think for the future and leave the past behind. And a lot of people, including Jerry Adams, have made great compromises to make a peace in Ireland. And a lot of people on the Unionist side have made a lot of compromises. And we've made no compromises. We're living in the South, we have it great, and we should sometimes just shut up. But that's hard for me.
Bob Dylan, in my back pages, I was so much older then, and I'm younger than that now. Have you had a lot of those realizations?
I think, compromise is probably, for me, is the hardest thing to swallow. But there's no doubt that it's the only way forward, and that goes with everything. But I think, if you have strong feelings about things, you've got to stand by them. And we've gone into countries and challenged politicians. We've taken hits for that, and that's part of the job of rock and roll. I mean, it's to challenge those things that other people maybe hold sacred, and it's hard sometimes because people are always going to say, well, why don't you just make music and just get back in your box? But the greatest rock and roll music that was made always had some kind of political message, no matter what that was. There was always some kind of rebellion there.
It's like as if pop music, if the idea that seems to be around pop music is, look, everything's okay, chill out, relax, it's not so bad, don't rock the boat. Rock music was always a different thing for us. Rock music was always about changing the world, of believing that you could change the world, at least the world inside your head, or the world inside your bedroom, but it just wasn't just laying back and taking it. And, that seems to me, and the people that have inspired us, like Bob Marley and the Wailers, or, whether the Clash, or something like that, they were always sticking their noses in other people's business.
It starts in your head, it usually ends up in your middle finger, then you learn more about the story, and,
right.
and you carry it on.
That's exactly right.
Do you feel that bands today are shirking the responsibility?
They've more sense. They've more sense than to take